Rambam, we actually finished yesterday, or actually we finished today, but we're
Chapter 1, Shabbat.
yeah, that's where we're gonna go. Oops. What's going on?
19.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So to finish off the first book, Sefer Ava. So the order of there's order of prayers, but you're gonna have to do that on your own. It's not so much. We're gonna go in Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, chapter 1. In the name of the Lord, the God of the world, I inherit your testimonies forever, for they are the joy of my heart. The third book of Times, Sefer Zmanim. Actually, the third book, right? We finished the first book, Sefer Mada. Second book is Sefer Ahava. And now Sefer Zmanim, the book of Times. Times meaning things that are related to a time of the year, right? Like every seventh day, the laws of Shabbos, 10 sets of halachas, laws of Eruvin, which is the enclosure to make a private domain on Shabbos, laws of Shrisas Osir, which means the 10th of the resting on the 10th, meaning Yom Kippur, Chametz Umatzah, of Shrisas Yom Tov, the law of resting on a holiday, Chametz Umatzah, laws of Shefer, Sukkah and Lulav, laws of Shkolim, the half shekel, Kiddush HaChodesh, sanctifying the new month, the laws of Tainus, of fasting, and laws of Megillah and Hanukkah. Introduction to Hilchos Shabbos. They contain 5 mitzvahs, 2 positive and 3 negative. To rest on the 7th day, not to perform work on this day. For the court not to administer punishment on Shabbos, not to proceed beyond the limits established for the Torah on Shabbos, and to sanctify the day by taking note of it. Okay. These mitzvahs are explained in the following chapters. I think we have like 30 chapters. We have a lot here. Resting from labor on the 7th day fulfills the positive commandments, as it states, and you shall rest on the 7th day. Anyone who performs a labor on this day negates the observance of positive commandments. It also transgresses a negative commandment because it says, do not perform any labor on it, right? So there's 2 things, positive and negative here, right?
Not sure what chapter you're on.
Chapter 1 of Shabbos. You're not there?
I'm here.
So you didn't see that we're in the first halacha. Second paragraph. What are the liabilities incurred by a person who performs labor on this day? If he does so willingly as a conscious act of defiance, he is liable for kares. Kares means early death. If witnesses who administer a warning are present, he should be stoned to death. If he performs labor without being conscious of the transgressions, he's liable to bring a sin offering of a fixed nature. Okay. So whenever the expression one who performs this is liable, thank you. So whenever the one who performs this is liable, is used in the context of Shabbos laws. The intent is that he's liable for kares, and if witnesses are present, they administer a warning. He's liable then to be stoned to death. If he performs such an activity without being aware of a transgression, he's liable for a sin offering. Right? So liable means one of the 3 possibilities, right? That's what it means. Is that clear? Excuse my spring allergies, yes. Halacha number 2, whenever the expression one who performs is not liable is used, the intent is that he's not liable for kares, right, which means early death, or execution by stoning, or for bringing a sin offering. It is, however, forbidden to perform this act on Shabbos. in such an instance, a prohibition is rabbinic in origin, right? And it was instituted as a safeguard against performance of labor. A person who performs such an act is given stripes of defiance, which is rabbinic law. So, for example, something is muksa, like a pen, right? Writing 2 letters on Shabbos, we will learn, is a malacha, is work on Shabbos, right? Called work. If you did it inadvertently, so then you have to bring a korban in times of Holy Temple. If you did it willfully, then you would early death, right? If you did it with witnesses and so on and so forth, so then there's death sentence, right? But how about if you touch a pen? Can you touch a pen on Shabbos? Yeah.
Why not? You shouldn't.
Biblically, you could. You just can't write with the pen. The rabbis came and said, don't touch the pen either. It's called muktzah, right? Muktzah, don't touch it because you might come to write. What if you did? Do you have to bring in a sacrifice? If you did it inadvertently? No, because it's only rabbinic law. It's not biblical law. If you did it, though, willfully, in defiance, then you can get also stripes. But that's rabbinic stripes. That's what's called stripes of defiance, for defiance, right? That's a rabbinic law, not a biblical law. Is that clear?
So there's less stringency when it comes to rabbinic law.
Yes, exactly. And much of the rabbinic law is a fence around the biblical law. Much of it. Okay? Similarly, one of his expressions is that this should not be performed, or it's forbidden to do this on Shabbos, are used. A person who performs such an act, conscious act of rebellion, is given stripes of defiance. So he's just stating here the parameters of the different, terminology that are going to be used. So we should understand whenever we go through. Okay, whenever the expression "it is permissible to do this" is used, the intent is that at the outset one may perform this act. Similarly, whenever an expression "one is under no obligation" or "one is not liable at all" are used, one does not receive any punishment at all for performing such an act. Okay. So it implies that it's improper to do it, but there is nothing punishing, right? Yeah. Yeah, for sure it's rabbinical. Because biblical, there is a consequence for everything, right? I mean, for the most part. 5, it is permissible to perform an act that is permitted on Shabbos, despite the fact that it is possible, but it is not an absolute certainty that as a result of one's actions, a forbidden labor will be performed, provided one does not have the intent to perform the labor. So what does it imply? What does it mean? A person may drag a bed, a chair, a bench, and the like on the ground on Shabbos, provided it does not intend to gouge out a groove in the earth while dragging them. You can't make a pit on Shabbos, right? You can't then I'm going to take a heavy bed, and back then the home was earth, right? So if you drag it, and for whatever reason you wanted now a small little pit, for whatever, it doesn't matter why, right? And you did it in order to do that, then you would be liable because you did that action in order to create a little pit, right? But if you were just dragging the bed because you have a guest and you want to put the bed in another place in the room, and it happened to make a gouge in the floor, but it was unintended, then that's okay.
That would be unintended consequences.
Right. Therefore, even if he did gouge out a groove in the ground while dragging them, it is of no consequence, for he did not have the intent in mind. Right? Because if you took a shovel and you now were shoveling and making a pit, well, now we'll learn later what if you took the shovel and made it, and you didn't do it to make the pit, but you wanted the earth?
Yeah, but to get it good, you have to do it. To make a pit.
So yeah, I know, but then it's a fine line of the consequence of such a thing. Well, we're going to learn later about that. We're going to see. It's a little complicated, right? If you did it for the pit, right? So that's an act, that's a work that you did, and that would you'd be liable for. If you took the shovel and you digging a pit because you want a pit, that's called malacha, right? But if you wanted the dirt and not the pit, right? So yes, you're not allowed to do it, but is there a consequence from it because you didn't want the work? You wanted the earth. That's all called work. That's all called malacha. To be careful. The word in Hebrew is malacha, not avodah. Avodah is also work. Avodah just means strenuous work. Malacha means work that accomplishes something, right? So having dirt isn't accomplishing something. Digging a pit that you have a pit that you could store things in, or you could use for whatever you need, that's a creative act. Okay? That's what's not allowed biblically. Okay? So similarly, if a person tread on grass on Shabbos, high grass, right? Regular low grass, is not an issue. As long as the intent is not to uproot it, right? Sometimes you walk in the grass and, you see a piece and you give a little kick because, you want to uproot it. That's intent to uproot, right? Thus, should it be uprooted, there is no consequence because he didn't intend to. Also, a person may rub powdered herbs and the like over his hands, provided he does not intend to remove his hair. Therefore, if the hair is removed, it's of no consequence. Based on the same rationale, one may enter a narrow opening on Shabbos, even though while doing so, he causes pieces of the wall to fall. Similarly, it is permissible to perform any act similar repercussions, provided that one does not have the intent of doing so. That's the key over here, right? We're good about that so far? Amazing. Give me a second. I just want to get out this book over here. Okay, number 6. In contrast, when one performs a deed that results in the performance of a forbidden labor, and it is certainly that this deed will cause the labor to be performed, one is liable even though he did not intend to perform the labor. He's going to give an example. Why isn't he? A person needs a fowl's head to serve as a toy for his child, right? Your child is crying, I want to have a doll. You have no dolls in the house, but you do have a chicken that got a head, right? So you're going to cut off the chicken's head, not in order to kill the chicken, not in order, right? Not to kill it, but just so you can have a doll to play with because your child is crying. So the intent is not to slaughter it, but you have to slaughter it in order to get the head of the doll, right? Is that clear? Although the ultimate purpose is not merely to slaughter the chicken, he is liable. Why? Because the only way you can get the doll, the chicken's head as a doll is by cutting it. So therefore, but remember, your intent wasn't that, but you're liable. It's a novelty. Because you might say, well, I didn't mean that.
Because the end result is that the chicken is going to be dead.
Yeah, but that might not be enough. That's the chiddush over here. The novelty is saying that, yes, you are liable, right? As opposed to walking on the grass, because walking on the grass, tall grass doesn't mean you have to uproot the grass. It may not happen. It may happen, may not happen, but you want to have this chicken head as your child's doll. I mean, right? And you cut its throat. Well, it has to happen that you slaughtered it, right? Exactly. Not that. That's not the point. You can't do it. You're liable In other words, the key over here is libel. You can't do it for sure. You can't do it. Question is that a biblical law or a rabbinic law? You might say, well, I didn't intend to kill. I didn't do it for the killing. I did it for the toy. So maybe you won't be liable. Forbidden, yes. Liable, maybe not. You're liable. Why? Because it has to be killed in order that you're going to have the head to play with, right? Right. So that's the idea. It's obvious and possible for the head to be living, to be cut off, and that it being survived. Instead, the fellow's death came about because of the activity. Therefore, he is liable, and the same applies in other similar situations. Right. Anyone who performs a forbidden labor, even if he has no need for the actual labor he performed, he is liable for his deed. What is implied? The person extinguished a lamp because he needed to save the oil or the wick from being destroyed. So you're not allowed to extinguish a light, just like you can't create a light, right? You can't extinguish the light. So you said, but I didn't do it to extinguish. I did it in order to save the oil. I need the oil. So my intent is for the oil, not to extinguish, right? It's a similar idea. Is that clear? What? Yeah. Oh, libel. Yes. Liable for his deed, exactly. Or a wicked from being destroyed, or the burning of it, the earthenware reservoir of the lamp that holds the oil would not break, since he had to the intent of extinguishing the lamp. Because in the end, you are extinguishing a lamp, even though he did not do so for the usual purpose of extinguishing, but merely for the sake of the oil, the wick or the earthenware, he is liable. Similarly, a person who moves a thorn 4 cubits in the public domain or extinguishes a coal so that many people will not be injured by it is liable, although the usual purpose served by extinguishing the coal or moving the thorn is not important to him, and his intent was merely to prevent injury, he's liable. The same applies in other similar situations. Okay? Now, if you had to put out the fire to save a life, that's a different story, but we're talking about the public domain where you don't have to do that. Whenever a person intends to perform a forbidden labor, but instead, through his actions, causes a performance of another forbidden labor for which he had no intent, he's not liable because his intent was not carried out. What is implied? A person threw a stone or shot an arrow at a colleague or at an animal with the intent of slaying them. Should the object that he propelled uproot a tree in its progress and not kill the intended victim, he is free of liability. Why? What's the difference over here? Are you allowed to do this? No. You're not liable, though. Why? Because the act that you wanted to do wasn't done. Different than before. Before, the act of slaughtering the chicken is what I wanted to do. I didn't do it to kill it. I did it so my child can have a toy. Problem is, I had to kill it in order that we can have the toy, right? So therefore, the act you wanted. But here, you didn't want this act. You didn't want this act. You wanted to shoot the animal and kill the animal, but it didn't, and it uprooted a tree, right? So the act that you wanted was not done. So therefore, you're not allowed to do it. It's forbidden, but you're not liable for the punishment. Biblically, at least. Biblically, you might get rabbinic punishment, but not biblical. Okay? How much more so does the principle apply if one had the intent of performing a lesser transgression and one performed a more serious one? For example, a person intended to throw a stone into a Carmelist, and instead he threw the stone passed into public domain, which public domain you'd be liable. He is not held liable. The same applies in other similar circumstances. Should a person have the intent of performing a permitted act and instead perform another act which is forbidden, he is not held liable. For example, should he intend to cut produce that was not attached to the ground, and instead he cut produce attached to the ground? Let's say there was in your backyard, you have a tomato that fell off, right? Fell off, and you cut the tomato. But in the act of cutting the tomato that was on the ground, you accidentally cut off a tomato that was attached to its bush, right? Which you're not allowed to do because that is a forbidden act, right? You can cut up a tomato that's not attached to the ground, right? But not attached, that's attached to the ground. You can't do that, right? You're not allowed to do that, exactly. But you didn't have the intent to do that, so you're not liable. Should a person intend to pick black figs and pick white figs, or should he intend to first to pick figs and then pick grapes, but instead he picked grapes and then figs? Also not liable. It's a different nuance. There's nuance in every halacha here. The Ravid takes issue with this because he's picking fruit. He accomplishes objective. He disagrees. So the Rambam, though, holds his understanding is a person is held liable. Not only must he accomplish what the ultimate intent, but also performing the labor. The actions must be controlled by his thoughts. In other words, your thoughts have to be in tune with what you're doing. So you wanted white and you took black instead. Instead of the white, it wasn't in tune, so therefore you're not liable. It's forbidden, but you're not liable for consequence, for punishment. That's the difference.
But the act of picking is forbidden.
Huh?
The act of picking is forbidden.
No. That's not the nuance here. We're talking about are you liable? Forbidden is forbidden.
Right, yeah. But he's not liable because the order in which it was.
Because he didn't do what he wanted.
Mhm.
That's part of the act. Your thought has to be attuned to what you wanted.
Mhm.
When you cut off the chicken head, you wanted to cut off the chicken head. Your thought was within that. You didn't do it to slaughter. That's not why you did it, right? Now's a new novelty. Well, actually, no, this is lesser, right?
Mhm.
Because I wanted to take the black figs, right? And I took the white ones. So I didn't do what I really wanted, even though they're both, what's the difference? It's both fruit, right? I picked it off the tree. What's the difference?
But the act is forbidden.
Huh?
I know you're speaking about liability, being liable.
Yeah, but that's not the point over here.
Mhm.
The point over here is that your thought has to be in the act that you actually wanted to do, not the general, but the specific act. And specifically, I wanted white, and somehow I picked out the black. So you're not liable. It's forbidden. That's not the point.
For taking a purposeful labor first.
Completely mindful in what you are intended to do. And it's not completely it's not full intention. That's the point. It's not full intention. Rambam says it has to be full intention. The Ravid argues on him and says no. Because what's the difference? A fruit's a fruit. Right? A black fig, white fig, what's it? So Rambam says no. Rambam says you have to be highly intentional to be liable. Forbidden, it's forbidden.
They soften the law.
He in fact picked everything that he desired, but instead he picked them in a order, did not pick them in the order he intended. He's not liable since he did not act according to his intent. This is purposeful labor, and that the Torah forbade, right? 10. When a person had two candles before him, and both of them were either burning or extinguished, and he desired to kindle or extinguish one, but instead he kindled and extinguished the other, he is liable, for he performed the forbidden labor that he intended to perform.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
The forbidden labor is extinction or
On the basis of the right. Contrast to the previous halacha, this is speaking about an instance when the person does not derive any advantage from kindling or extinguishing either candle. He merely wants to kindle and extinguish a candle. Now there's a different. I like black figs. I accidentally took the white one. That's secondary to me. That makes a difference. But over here, I didn't care which candle was lit or which one was extinguished. So therefore, that's why you're liable. That's a nuance of a difference.
Just doing the act.
To what can the matter be compared? To a person who intended to pick one fig and picked another instead, or to a person who desired to kill one living being and killed another instead. He is liable because the forbidden labor that he intended to do was performed. Psh. Okay? I hope you're getting the nuance here. It's very nuanced. Yes. Halach number 11. One is, however, freed of liability in the following instance. There are two candles before a person, one lit and one extinguished. The person intended to kindle the one that was extinguished first and then extinguish the second candle afterwards. Nevertheless, the order of the actions became reversed, and instead he extinguished the first candle first and then kindled the second candle afterwards. So you're liable. Right. If he extinguished one and kindled the other in a single breath, he's liable. Although he did not kindle the first candle before extinguishing the other, he did not delay its lighting and perform both activities simultaneously, therefore he's liable. Same applies in similar circumstances. Whenever a person performs a forbidden labor casually without specific intention, he's not liable. Whenever a person intended to perform forbidden labor and performed it more effectively than he had originally intended, he is liable. If he performs it less effectively than originally, then he's not liable, because that's not what he wanted. You'll always want more. What does it imply? A person intended to carry a burden suspended behind him, and instead he swung it in front of him. He's liable for intending to protect it in a less effective manner, and he was ultimately protected in a more effective manner. Right. Behind you is less effective. In front of you is more effective. You're protecting your pouch, right? So therefore, you're doing something more effective. Therefore, you're liable. If, however, you intended to carry the burden suspended before him and instead he swung it behind him, he's not liable for he intended to protect in the more effective manner and the ultimate protect in the less effective manner. But let's say I was, someone was carrying, Reuven was carrying his pouch in front of, and he wanted to carry it in front of him because it's more protective that way. Right, he's carrying, right? But he swung it behind him, and now he didn't do what he intended to do. He's carrying, but he didn't intend it to. He's doing it in a less effective manner. You won't be liable. Forbidden, but not liable. Hope that's clear. Okay, I got to stop here. Okay, folks.
Totally pretty
Yeah, I got to stop. We will continue. God bless.